young man walked into Judge Judy's courtroom, smiling like someone arriving at a private party instead of a legal hearing. 3 hours later, that same smile was gone. And for the first time in his entire life, people watched him realize that money could not buy control over everyone in the room. But here's what makes this case unforgettable. It wasn't just the arrogance. It wasn't the insults. It wasn't even the moment he leaned forward, looked directly at Judge Judy, and said the 5 words that instantly froze the entire courtroom. "I practically own you." No. What made this case explode across the internet was what happened immediately after those words left his mouth. Because the second he said them, Judge Judy stopped speaking. And Judge Judy almost never stopped speaking. The courtroom went completely silent. Even the audience felt it. That strange shift in the air when everyone suddenly realizes something has gone terribly wrong. The producers stopped moving. The bailiff slowly turned his head. And the billionaire sitting in the back row, the young man's own father, closed his eyes like he already knew the disaster that was coming next. But to understand why this moment became one of the most talked about courtroom confrontations ever televised, you first need to understand exactly who Ethan Callaway was. Because people like Ethan don't become this arrogant overnight. They are created, built slowly through years of privilege, protection, and power without consequences. 24-year-old Ethan Callaway was the son of tech billionaire Richard Callaway, founder of one of the largest cybersecurity companies in America. By age 23, Ethan already owned 3 luxury penthouses, drove a custom black Rolls-Royce worth more than most homes, and had over 7 million followers online, documenting his extravagant lifestyle: private jets, luxury watches, VIP clubs, champagne towers, designer suits tailored in Milan. Everything about Ethan's public image screamed untouchable, and honestly, for most of his life, he was. Teachers avoided confronting him. Police officers gave warnings instead of tickets. University administrators quietly buried scandals after generous donations from his father arrived days later. Classic power insulation, a psychological phenomenon where wealthy individuals slowly stop believing rules apply to them because consequences are constantly removed before impact occurs. And that's exactly what happened to Ethan. Over time, his confidence evolved into something darker: entitlement, then superiority, then eventually contempt, especially toward people he considered below him: employees, waiters, drivers, security staff, even lawyers. Former assistants later described Ethan as someone who enjoyed humiliating people publicly just to prove he could. One former chauffeur claimed Ethan once threw cash onto the pavement during an argument and calmly told him, "Pick it up. That's what you people do best." That story alone circulated online for weeks, but somehow nothing ever stuck. Every scandal disappeared, every accusation faded, every lawsuit settled quietly. Because when enormous wealth enters a problem, problems often vanish before reaching public view. Until one woman refused to back down. Her name was Maria Delgado, 46 years old, single mother, former pediatric nurse. And unlike the influencers and executives surrounding Ethan's world, Maria looked like someone you'd pass every day without noticing. Spibbled clothes, tired eyes, calm voice, no social status, no expensive attorney, no connections. But people underestimated Maria constantly. And that would become Ethan's biggest mistake. The case itself sounded small at first, almost laughably small considering the people involved. A damaged vehicle dispute. That was it, at least on paper. Maria claimed Ethan crashed his $400,000 Lamborghini into her parked Honda Civic outside a charity gala in Beverly Hills, then drove away after threatening her. Ethan denied everything. His legal team insisted Maria fabricated the story, hoping for a payday. Pretty standard rich versus working class courtroom setup. But here's where things start getting disturbing. Maria didn't initially file the lawsuit for money. She filed because of what Ethan allegedly said after the crash. According to Maria, Ethan stepped out of the Lamborghini, looked at the damage for less than 3 seconds, then laughed. Actually laughed. Then he reportedly told her, "Do you know who my father is? Your entire car is worth less than my shoes." The audience in court later reacted visibly when that statement was repeated aloud, because deep down, everyone recognizes this type of person, the kind who mistakes wealth for moral superiority. And Judge Judy recognized it too. Immediately, when Ethan first entered the courtroom, Judge Judy studied him silently with the kind of expression longtime viewers knew very well. Not anger, not irritation, assessment. Judge Judy has spent decades observing liars, manipulators, narcissists, and professional victims. And one thing she understands better than almost anyone is behavioral leakage, tiny signals people reveal unintentionally when they believe they are in control. Ethan displayed all of them, smirking during introductions, interrupting casually, checking his phone while others spoke, leaning too far back in his chair. Psychologically, these are dominance displays, subtle ways certain personalities attempt to establish hierarchy in a room. But here's the fascinating part. People who rely heavily on dominance often panic the moment they lose narrative control, and Ethan had no idea. Judge Judy was already preparing to take control away from him piece by piece. The hearing began calmly enough. Maria spoke first. Her voice trembled slightly, but she stayed composed. She explained how she worked extra hospital shifts for nearly 6 years to afford her Honda Civic, not because she loved cars, because she needed reliable transportation to care for her son, who suffered from a chronic heart condition requiring constant medical visits. Immediately, the emotional dynamic in the courtroom shifted. You could feel it. The audience leaned forward. Even some production assistants reportedly stopped typing notes, because suddenly this wasn't about a car anymore. It was about survival versus excess. Maria then described the night of the gala, rain falling lightly. Traffic backed up outside the hotel entrance. Her parked Civic waiting near Valley Pickup, then, impact, a violent crash from behind. She stepped out, saw the black Lamborghini, saw Ethan emerging from the driver's seat, holding a champagne glass. And according to Maria, he didn't look scared. He looked annoyed that someone expected accountability from him. That detail matters, because true entitlement often reveals itself not through aggression. Inconvenience. People accustomed to escaping consequences become irritated when consequences even appear nearby. Judge Judy listened carefully, completely expressionless. Then she turned toward Ethan. "Did you hit a vehicle?" Ethan smiled faintly. "No, Your Honor. Not nervous, not defensive, smooth." Too smooth. Classic overconfidence. Judge Judy narrowed her eyes slightly. "And where were you immediately before the alleged accident?" "At the Callaway Foundation charity event." "With alcohol present?" Ethan shrugged casually. Obviously, some audience members exchanged looks. Notice the wording there. Obviously. That's social positioning language, a subtle attempt to portray luxury behavior as normal and unquestionable. Judge Judy noticed it too. Her tone sharpened slightly. "How much had you consumed?" Ethan leaned back. "I'm not on trial for drinking champagne." Interesting deflection. He answered emotion with attitude instead of information, and that usually signals danger, because innocent people typically answer direct questions directly. Manipulative personalities often answer the tone instead. Then something happened that completely changed the atmosphere in the courtroom. Maria quietly reached into her purse and removed her phone. "I have a recording," she said softly. And instantly, Ethan stopped smiling, just for half a second. But it was enough. Judge Judy noticed, the cameras noticed, and the audience definitely noticed. That microscopic flicker of panic crossing someone's face when they suddenly realize evidence exists they weren't prepared for. Judge Judy extended her hand. "Give it to the bailiff." The courtroom became so quiet you could hear papers moving across the judge's desk. Ethan's attorney suddenly leaned toward him, whispering urgently. Too urgently. Another bad sign. Then Judge Judy pressed play. Static filled the speakers first. Rain, car horns, muffled shouting, and then Ethan's voice clear as day. "You think I care about your stupid car?" The audience immediately stirred. Maria lowered her eyes. Judge Judy's face hardened, but the recording wasn't over. Not even close, because 10 seconds later, Courtroom heard something far worse, something so arrogant, so unbelievably reckless, that even Judge Judy looked genuinely stunned for the first time all day, and that was the moment everything began to collapse. The recording continued playing through the courtroom speakers. Rain crackled in the background. Somewhere outside, a valet whistle blew faintly. But nobody inside that courtroom cared about any of that anymore, because every person present was now completely focused on Ethan Callaway's voice echoing through the silence. Cold, dismissive, amused. "You people are all the same," the recording captured him saying, "always looking for someone rich to blame." Judge Judy's expression didn't change, but if you watched carefully, you could see her fingers slowly tap once against the bench, a tiny movement. Yet longtime viewers knew exactly what it meant. She was angry. Not emotional anger, controlled anger, the dangerous kind. The kind judges develop after decades of watching powerful people weaponize arrogance against ordinary citizens. And Ethan? He still didn't fully understand the situation he was in. That's important psychologically. People raised inside insulated wealth bubbles often mistake delayed consequences for permanent immunity. Ethan genuinely believed this hearing was still manageable. Embarrassing maybe, annoying perhaps, but dangerous. No, not yet. Then the audio continued. Maria's voice entered next, shaky but firm. "You hit my car. You could at least apologize." And Ethan laughed, actually laughed. "You should be thanking me," he said. "Now your life has an interesting story." Several audience members visibly reacted. One woman in the second row covered her mouth. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably, because the cruelty in Ethan's tone wasn't impulsive. It was casual. That distinction matters. Casual cruelty is often more disturbing than explosive anger because it reveals normalization to Ethan. Humiliating people had become ordinary behavior. Judge Judy paused the recording, her eyes locked onto Ethan. "Is that your voice?" Ethan exhaled slowly through his nose. "Yes." No denial. Interesting strategy. His attorney immediately leaned forward. "Your Honor, the comments may sound insensitive, but they do not prove responsibility for the accident. Smart legal pivot, distance morality from liability, classic courtroom damage control." But Judge Judy wasn't looking at the attorney anymore. She was studying Ethan directly. "You sound proud of yourself," she said calmly. Ethan smirked faintly. "I was irritated." "No," Judge Judy replied quietly. "You were entertained." And suddenly, room became uncomfortable again. Because she was right, everyone could hear it now. That wasn't the voice of someone stressed after an accident. It was the voice of someone enjoying power over another person. Psychologically, this is called dominance gratification. Certain personalities experience emotional satisfaction from making others feel small, and Ethan displayed it repeatedly. But here's where things became much worse for him. Judge Judy asked a very simple question next. "One thing confuses me, Mr. Callaway." Ethan adjusted his cufflinks. "What's that?" "If the accident never happened." She leaned forward slightly. "Why did your insurance company attempt to contact Miss Delgado 2 days later offering a settlement?" Silence. Real silence this time. Ethan's attorney froze mid-breath. And for the first time all afternoon, Ethan blinked twice rapidly. That tiny reaction told Judge Judy everything, because surprise is hard to fake, especially when someone believes they already control the narrative. Maria slowly removed another document from her folder. A printed email. The judge reviewed it quietly, then lifted her eyebrows. Interesting. Very interesting. The insurance company had apparently offered Maria $18,000 privately before the hearing ever began, which immediately created a massive contradiction. You don't usually offer settlements for accidents you claim never occurred. Now Ethan's attorney jumped in aggressively. Settlement offers are not admissions of guilt. Technically correct, but emotionally disastrous. Because now the courtroom audience sensed what was happening. The story was cracking apart. And once public perception shifts inside a courtroom, confidence becomes incredibly difficult to recover. Judge Judy looked toward Ethan again. "Did you personally speak with your insurance company?" "Yes." "And did you tell them there was no collision?" Yes, then why would they offer money? Ethan hesitated. Only briefly. But hesitation under pressure is revealing, especially from personalities built entirely around confidence. They probably wanted to avoid publicity. Wrong answer. Judge Judy caught it instantly. Publicity? She repeated. So you already believe this situation could damage your reputation. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. Tiny leakage again. The audience felt it too. That subtle moment when a confident person realizes they may have said too much. And here's something fascinating about high-pressure courtroom dynamics. The more narcissistic an individual is, the more difficult it becomes for them to stay strategically silent. Because narcissism creates compulsive self-defense. The overwhelming need to preserve superiority. Ethan kept falling into that trap repeatedly. Then Maria quietly spoke again. I didn't even want money at first. Judge Judy turned toward her. What did you want? Maria swallowed hard. An apology. That hit the room differently. Suddenly, the emotional balance shifted heavily in her favor, because juries, audiences, and even judges instinctively respond to proportionality. Maria wasn't demanding millions. She wasn't seeking fame. She wanted acknowledgement, human decency, and according to her, Ethan responded by threatening her instead. Judge Judy narrowed her eyes. Threatening? Maria nodded slowly. Then she revealed something nobody expected. After I told him I would report the accident, she looked toward Ethan carefully. He told me people like him make problems disappear. A murmur spread across the courtroom. Ethan immediately laughed under his breath. Bad decision, very bad decision. Judge Judy heard it. What's funny? Ethan shook his head casually. This is dramatic. Notice that word again. Dramatic. Not false, not inaccurate. Dramatic. Manipulative personalities often minimize accusations emotionally before challenging them factually. It's a subtle delegitimization tactic, and Judge Judy recognized it instantly. You think she's performing? The judge asked. Ethan shrugged. I think people see an opportunity when famous families are involved. There it was again. The underlying belief system, wealth as victimhood, privilege reframed as persecution. And Judge Judy had spent decades dismantling exactly that mentality. Then came the first truly catastrophic moment for Ethan. Judge Judy asked him a question so simple, most people barely noticed it at first. Who was driving the Lamborghini? I was. Whose name is the vehicle registered under? My father's company. And who pays your legal expenses? A pause. My father. Judge Judy nodded slowly. And who pays your insurance? Another pause. My father. And who purchased the car? This time Ethan didn't answer immediately. The courtroom felt strangely tense, because everyone suddenly understood where this line of questioning was going. Finally, Ethan muttered, My father. Judge Judy leaned back. Then came the sentence that visibly pierced Ethan's composure for the first time. So, at what point exactly? She asked calmly. Did you become self-made? The audience exploded into laughter. Even some courtroom staff looked down to hide smiles. Ethan's face darkened instantly. Humiliation. Public humiliation. And narcissistic personalities often react extremely badly to humiliation because their self-image depends heavily on external superiority. That's when Ethan made the mistake that changed everything. Instead of staying quiet, he attacked. He leaned forward slowly, smile gone, voice colder now. You know what I think? He said. Judge Judy didn't respond. I think people like her. He gestured toward Maria. Love pretending wealthy families are evil because it makes failure easier to accept. Gasps spread through the room. Maria looked stunned, but Ethan kept going. This woman saw my last name and thought she hit the lottery. And then he turned directly toward Judge Judy. You're encouraging it. Dangerous, extremely dangerous. Because Ethan no longer sounded confident, he sounded offended that someone dared challenge him, and offended entitlement often becomes reckless entitlement. Judge Judy's stare hardened. Careful. But Ethan ignored the warning completely. You sit there acting powerful, he said quietly, but families like mine built the systems people like you profit from. The courtroom froze. The audience stopped moving. Even Ethan's attorney looked horrified now. Because this wasn't strategy anymore. This was ego unraveling in real time. Judge Judy spoke softly. People like me and Ethan, still blinded by arrogance, made the worst decision of his life. He smiled faintly and said, "Come on, Judge Judy. Let's not pretend television judges aren't employees of people wealthier than you." Silence. Silence. Then something unexpected happened. Judge Judy stopped speaking completely. No interruption, no sarcasm, no comeback. Just stillness, and strangely, that terrified everyone more, because when highly intelligent authority figures suddenly become calm during confrontation, it usually means they've decided something. Ethan's father shifted uneasily in the back row for the first time. Judge Judy slowly removed her glasses, folded them carefully, then looked directly at Ethan with an expression the cameras would replay millions of times online afterward. Not anger, disappointment controlled, devastating disappointment. And when she finally spoke, her voice was almost quiet. "Mr. Calloway," she said, "you have absolutely no idea what kind of room you're sitting in." Then she reached for a sealed envelope sitting beside her bench, one Ethan clearly had never noticed before. And the second Judge Judy opened it, his attorney went pale. The courtroom air changed the moment Judge Judy opened the envelope, not dramatically, not loudly, but in a way every experienced courtroom observer immediately recognized control had shifted. Completely. Up until this point, Ethan Calloway still believed he was participating in a performance he could dominate, a televised dispute, a public relations inconvenience, something his family's lawyers would eventually smooth over behind closed doors. But the second his attorney saw the contents of that envelope, that illusion shattered. The man's face lost color instantly. And here's the fascinating thing about fear inside courtrooms. Real fear spreads silently. One person notices, then another. Then suddenly the entire room feels it without anyone saying a word. Judge Judy calmly adjusted the papers in front of her. Meanwhile, Ethan's father, Richard Calloway, leaned forward sharply from the gallery seating. For the first time all afternoon, the billionaire no longer looked bored. He looked worried, deeply worried. And Ethan noticed it too. That's when his confidence began cracking internally, because privileged individuals often use powerful parental figures as emotional anchors. As long as Ethan believed his father remained calm, he could maintain the fantasy of safety. But Richard Calloway wasn't calm anymore. Not even close. Judge Judy finally spoke. "Interesting," she said quietly. No one moved. She lifted one document slowly. "Mr. Calloway, would you like to explain why your vehicle's onboard driving system recorded impact damage at exactly 10:42 p.m. on the night of the accident?" Ethan froze, actually froze. His expression didn't collapse immediately, which made it even more revealing, because you could literally watch his brain trying to calculate how much information the court possessed. That tiny delay. That's cognitive panic. The moment someone realizes their prepared narrative may no longer work. His attorney immediately stood. "Your Honor, we haven't reviewed." Judge Judy cut him off instantly. "You received copies this morning." Another devastating hit, because now everyone understood something critical. The defense already knew evidence existed, and yet Ethan still chose arrogance. Psychologically, that's important. It meant his behavior wasn't accidental. It was compulsive. Judge Judy continued calmly. The Lamborghini's internal monitoring system documented sudden rear-end collision force, driver door opening, engine restart, and acceleration from the scene. She paused deliberately. In simple English, her eyes locked onto Ethan. "Your own car recorded the hit and run." The audience erupted. Whispers exploded across the courtroom. Even the bailiff had to raise his voice for silence. And Ethan? He sat perfectly still, which, interestingly, can sometimes reveal more than emotional outbursts. Because some manipulative personalities respond to exposure by emotionally shutting down while rapidly searching for alternative escape routes. Judge Judy noticed immediately. "You're quiet now." Ethan swallowed once. "It doesn't prove I caused damage intentionally." There it was. Notice the shift? He moved from denying the collision entirely to arguing intent. That's called narrative retreat. When evidence destroys one defense, the mind immediately retreats to a smaller argument. And Judge Judy was dismantling him layer by layer. But she wasn't finished. Not remotely. She picked up another sheet from the envelope. This next part interests me even more. Ethan's attorney closed his eyes briefly. He already knew. The courtroom didn't yet. And he did. Judge Judy looked toward Maria. Miss Delgado, after the accident, did anyone contact you privately asking you not to proceed legally? Maria nodded slowly. Yes. Who? A man from Mr. Calloway's company. Judge Judy lifted the paper higher. According to phone records submitted this morning, you received 6 calls within 24 hours from executives connected to Calloway Technologies. The audience murmured again, and suddenly this case no longer felt like a simple traffic dispute. It felt systemic, powerful people managing fallout behind the scenes. Then Judge Judy delivered another blow. One voicemail was preserved. Ethan's head snapped upward instantly. That reaction alone told everyone enough. Judge Judy pressed a button beside her desk. The recording played through the courtroom speakers. A male voice entered calmly, professional, controlled. Miss Delgado, pursuing legal action against the Calloway family would be extremely unfortunate for everyone involved. A pause. Then the line that changed the atmosphere entirely. People in your financial position usually benefit more from cooperation than conflict. The audience audibly reacted, because everyone heard the hidden meaning underneath those words. Not a direct threat, something colder, implied pressure. The language of wealthy institutions protecting themselves without technically crossing legal lines. Classic corporate intimidation strategy. Judge Judy stopped the recording. Do you know who made that call? Mr. Calloway. Ethan hesitated. My father's legal department handles things independently. Weak answer, very weak. Judge Judy leaned forward. So your defense is incompetence? That landed hard, especially because Ethan had spent the entire hearing projecting superiority and control. Now suddenly he wanted distance from responsibility. Judge Judy recognized the contradiction instantly. You're powerful when insulting people, she said, but helpless when accountability appears. Silence. The audience could practically feel Ethan unraveling internally now. And then, something unexpected happened. Richard Calloway stood up from the gallery. The billionaire himself, every head turned instantly. Now, this was no longer ordinary television courtroom drama. This was becoming something much larger. Richard straightened his jacket calmly. Your Honor, he said carefully, I'd like permission to speak. Judge Judy stared at him for several seconds. And here's what made this moment fascinating. Richard Calloway was nothing like his son. No flashy arrogance, no emotional outbursts, no visible ego. Men like Richard rarely become billionaires through recklessness. They survive through discipline, calculation, image management, which made what happened next even more shocking. Judge Judy allowed it. Briefly, Richard nodded once, then turned toward Maria. Miss Delgado, he said, on behalf of my family, I apologize for what occurred. The courtroom went dead silent. Ethan looked stunned, actually stunned, because narcissistic personalities often expect unconditional parental defense. But Richard wasn't defending him. He was containing damage, huge difference, and Ethan realized it immediately. Dad. Richard silenced him with one glance, cold, sharp, controlled, a lifetime of authority inside a single look. Then Richard faced Judge Judy again. My son acted irresponsibly. That sentence visibly wounded Ethan more than any evidence so far, because for the first time publicly, his father had withdrawn protection. Psychologically, this is catastrophic for entitlement-based personalities. Once protection disappears, panic floods in fast. Judge Judy folded her hands calmly. Mr. Calloway, she said, your apology appears selective. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. How so? You apologized for the accident, Judge Judy replied. You did not apologize for the intimidation. Silence again. And suddenly even Richard looked careful now, because Judge Judy had shifted the case beyond property damage entirely. This was now about abuse of influence. And abuse of influence destroys public image far faster than ordinary misconduct. especially on television. Richard answered cautiously. I was unaware of those communications. Judge Judy responded immediately. That would concern me greatly if I were running your company. Another hit subtle, professional, devastating.